there's three dominant varietals or species of grapes that are being used. There's Vitis blandieri, Vitis riparia, and Vitis rupestris. And blandieri is the kind of the basis. And then if you're growing grapes down in the valley floor, you're probably using Vitis riparia. And riparia, as you might imagine, was found along a riverbank. Right. That's why it's called Vitis riparia, riparian corridor. And it needs water and it needs deep soil. Rupestris, Vitis rupestris, also found in the Texas area, southwestern United States, doesn't grow along the riparian area. It grows out in the desert, has a very different root structure, very fine rootlet hairs, and tends to go deeper and brings the water up in the roots in a way that riparia doesn't, which should mean that it is a drought-tolerant rootstock, and we've always all assumed that. And so when we got phylloxera, we went to 110R, 1103 Paulson, and 140R, 140 Ruggieri. And these are all rupestris based. And we use primarily 1103 Paulson as the kind of default. In rocky soils, we use 1103 Paulson. 140 Ruggieri. And this year, that block up there I showed you, that's going to be our first block of 140 Ruggieri. I am not happy with the rootstocks that we have. California is arid. We should be using rootstocks that minimize the use of water. Down in the valley floor, they tend to use riparia, which needs water. So they're using a rootstock where they shouldn't need it, and they're using it that requires water. So it's a dumb deal. But once you put your rootstock in, you're stuck with it, hopefully for 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah. And what I started noticing, I don't know, I started having a little uneasy feeling about 1103 Paulson maybe 5 years ago. And I first planted it in 98. And I see some basal leaves starting to turn yellow sooner than I would like. And we've dry farmed. We start out like here, we have drip irrigation, and we give them, I think of them like kids. We give them as much nourishment and water as we can. We get them to grow up strong and healthy, and then somewhere about age 7 or 6, it's kind of like teenagers and tough luck. You kick them out the door, and you go, adios, dude, good luck. And we wean them off, okay? We don't just cut them off cold turkey. Every year they get less and less water, and about that 6th year we are able to, or 7th, they're on their own. But we as an industry should be looking at and trying to develop more drought-tolerant rootstocks. Now, when we first planted in 72, we planted on our own roots, that 20 acres that we first planted. And that worked really well until, of course, we got phylloxera. But at the same time that we planted those 20 acres, we also planted an acre of AXR #1, knowing that we would eventually get phylloxera. And then we started expanding the vineyard out with our own rootstocks, and we made our own bench grafts. And we thought AXR will protect us once we get phylloxera, because we knew we would get phylloxera. And the reason we went on our own roots at that time is because this was all forest. There was no phylloxera left. Phylloxera lives on grapevines, not on Douglas firs and oaks and madrones. So, and then we brought out we brought no equipment in that came out of existing vineyards, and we were very detail oriented to keep everything out, and it worked. Our last block of from 72 was just pulled out 3 years ago. So we got well over 40 years of variety, use out of it. But AXR was a really good rootstock. It suppressed viruses well. It was very drought tolerant. It grafted well. It rooted well. It produced good grapes. We could dry farm it really well. There was only one little itty bitty problem with it. It was susceptible to phylloxera.